Hello, in this demonstration, I am going to paint a Fauvist Texture Scape. And my intent is to take a recognizable image and abstract it to basic shapes, which I've done here. And here is my original image of succulents. And what I did was after I put a fluorescent wash ground on this piece of Bristol paper, I did a carbon paper transfer to abstract these shapes. And then I'm going to explore color interaction on this background and also use texture to mimic some of these plant forms. So the colors I chose, I've got cool colors, a light phthalo green from Golden, an ash blue from Savanna, a cadmium yellow deep from Savanna, a vermilion from Savanna, a Savanna neutral color from Savanna, neutral gray from Golden, and a sap green. So cool and warm colors and neutrals on this fluorescent background. The place I would start initially would be to block in the larger shapes, such as the background. In my original image, that was a fence, but I'm going to make it the sky. And I'm just going to go quickly. And so what you're going to observe, what I'm observing, is color interaction in real time. And at the end of this video, I will show you the exact same composition using the exact same colors on a blue background and on an orange background. For comparison, you'll see a pretty significant difference. And the background color, that's a Liquitex gouache, fluorescent gouache. Okay, and then I'm going to block in some of the ground shapes here with this neutral Savanna color. Again, not fussy. I'm not worrying about filling in precisely next to that line. I actually want some of the pink to show through. Okay, now I'm going to plop in some blue here and over here. And this is going to be underpainting. I'm going to put some other color on top, but I'm planning ahead here by blocking out this underpainting. There's going to be grass in this area, and I want to have some dry time. So I'm putting this in ahead of time. Same with this area here. And this area over here. So this is all underpainting. Okay, now I'm going to go on to some of my texture and mimicry. So I'm going to look at the succulents, and I want to come up with lines that can mimic those shapes. So on a little sheet of paper here, I did a test with the sap green and the neutral gray, and these are going to be longer marks that I drag out to mimic the agave or agaves. And a really good example of mark making and mimicry would be Van Gogh. He used all kinds of textural marks to represent plants and fences, because you cannot draw every leaf on a tree, or you could, but it would take a long time. But you can suggest it through mark making. Now I'm going with the neutral gray. Okay, now on to my next marks, which are going to be all these succulents down here. I'm going to use kind of dotted marks, and I chose the light phthalo green and the ash blue. So I'm going to go on to those colors now. And I'm looking at the directional lines or marks of those succulents. They seem to sort of go across, while these go in a more upward fashion. Got mixed up. I'm supposed to do my warm colors in there. That's okay. And I'm just using the paint with very little water. I'm doing sort of these thick globby globs. I might make my marks smaller in the background to suggest distance. Okay, now onto my ash blue. And what's nice about having the composition laid out and predetermined, it just frees you up to explore mark making, paint interaction. Okay, and now I'm going to go on to these succulents here and here. And again, the marks that I'm seeing tend to go to the side, and I'm going to use a Cadmium Yellow Deep and my Vermillion. And then this plant up here has lines that seem to go more vertically. It almost looks like coral. I think the plant is called Sticks of Fire. Okay, now on to my Vermillion. And I'm doing this quickly so you get the idea, but I would probably take more time on it. Maybe even some finer brushes. Okay, and now I want to come in and get these grasses here. And for that, I'm going to use a ratty old house brush and brush over the blue and the Savanna areas with the light Phthalo Green. This requires a dry brush, and you might want to practice off to the side. Make sure you don't have too much paint on your brush. And then I'm just going to whisk this across. To suggest that grass. Okay, so that's the overall picture. I would come in and I could finesse this a little bit more, maybe thicken up some of my paint in the background. Probably put some different values on the rock there, maybe sort of some stippling to suggest rock. So I could just kind of brush on top of here. That would make my more of my rock texture, which is different than my plant texture. But that's the basic idea of flattening out an image, abstracting it, and then using warm, cool, and neutral colors on a vibrant background to create this sort of electric color interaction like the Fauves did. And as I said, I was going to show you two other studies, exact same composition. Here is one in, here's one in blue, same color palette, same composition, much calmer feeling than the pink. And then I also did one in orange, which as I was working on it, really made me uncomfortable. It was not really a pleasant experience. Now I kind of like it. It feels like a very hot day, but I would probably play with adjusting these values more, maybe intensifying the red. I thought it was the whole thing was going to look really vibrant, but I think because the background is so vibrant, the paint sort of ended up looking dark and dull. A little more contrast here, not as much competition with the pink, and then calmer with the blue. I think what's really interesting is this Savanna color on the blue and on the orange are exactly the same, but the one on the orange reads much darker. So it's fun doing several studies, different background colors, and seeing how the background color affects what's being painted on top. Okay, and that is it for a Fauvist Texture Scape.